Retired professor sees homeless woman defending child and discovers she was his best student. Walter Thompson was walking through Central Park in New York City when he heard desperate screams coming from behind the benches near the bandstand. A disheveled woman held a small girl tightly against her chest, trying to shield her from a young man who was reaching aggressively toward the child. It was when the young man raised his voice that the retired professor decided to step closer. The man wore expensive clothes, a stark contrast to the scene, and spoke with authority about taking the girl away. The woman retreated with each step, whispering words of comfort into the ear of the softly crying child. "Please, she doesn't want to go," the woman pleaded, her hoarse voice betraying days without proper rest. "It's not about what she wants, Jessica. The family has decided, and that's final," the young man replied, adjusting his designer coat. Walter stopped a few feet away, pretending to observe the trees. That woman's voice stirred something in his memory. When she turned her face toward him, the professor felt the world spin. Even with tangled hair and a face marked by hardship, those determined green eyes were unmistakable. Jessica Wilson, his brightest student in 40 years of teaching. The young woman who answered complex questions about American literature as if reciting poetry from memory. The same one he had personally recommended for a full scholarship at Columbia University, so great was her dedication to her studies. The one who always arrived early to class and stayed late, asking questions that revealed a thirst for knowledge he had rarely seen. Jessica recognized him in that moment too. Her eyes widened, and she took a step back, as if she wanted to vanish among the park's trees. Embarrassment washed over her face, and she clutched the little girl even tighter. "Professor Walter," she murmured, lowering her head. The young man looked between them impatiently. "Who's this old guy?" "Jessica, we're not spending all day here. You know Mom's waiting." "This old guy is my professor," Jessica replied, still avoiding Walter's gaze. "Professor, this is my brother, Michael." Walter stepped forward slowly, trying to process the information. The girl in Jessica's arms couldn't have been older than 7 and watched him curiously through her tears. "Jessica, my dear, what happened to you?" the professor asked, his voice thick with genuine concern. "Nothing happened, Professor. Life just took its course," she answered, skirting the details. Michael huffed in irritation. "Jessica, you know exactly what happened. Your choices led you here. Now stop the drama and hand over Emily. The family can give her a better life." The little girl, Emily, clung even tighter to her mother's neck. "I don't want to go, Mommy. I want to stay with you," the child said, her voice choked with tears. Walter watched the scene with a heavy heart. Something was deeply wrong here. Jessica had always been a responsible, determined young woman. Seeing her like this left him confused and worried. "Michael, could you give us a moment?" the professor asked, using the firm tone he once reserved for the classroom. "No, sir. I came to get my niece, and I'm not leaving without her," the young man shot back, crossing his arms. Jessica sighed heavily. "Professor, you don't need to get involved. This is a family matter." "Jessica, you were like a daughter to me during those years at school. Anything concerning you matters to me," Walter replied, his voice softer now. Emily lifted her head and looked at the professor. "Do you know my mommy?" she asked with the innocence of childhood. "Yes, sweetheart. Your mommy was the smartest student I ever had. Mom always tells me she studied so hard when she was young," said Emily, wiping her tears with the back of her small hand. Michael rolled his eyes. "Studied so much that she got pregnant in her first year of college and threw it all away." The silence that followed was tense. Jessica closed her eyes as if trying to shield herself from her brother's words. Walter felt a pang in his chest. He remembered perfectly the day he found out Jessica had gotten the scholarship. The joy in the young woman's eyes was contagious, and now... "Jessica, what really happened?" asked the professor, his voice heavy with sadness. "Professor, some stories are too long to tell in a park," she replied, forcing a smile. "Then tell me little by little. Start with what happened to your studies." Jessica looked at Emily, who was absently playing with the buttons on her mother's worn-out coat. "I got into Columbia, Professor. I was in my first semester of literature when I met someone." "Her father," Michael interrupted, pointing at Emily. Some rich boy who vanished as soon as he found out about the pregnancy. "Michael, please," Jessica whispered. Walter watched the interaction between the siblings. There was a complex dynamic there filled with old resentments. "And what did the family decide when they found out about the pregnancy?" asked the professor. "That she was dishonoring the family name," Michael answered, before Jessica could speak. "Dad said if she didn't take care of the problem, she'd have to leave home." "Problem?" Walter repeated, outraged. "You're talking about a child." Emily, though small, seemed to understand she was being discussed. She shrank further into her mother's arms. "She's not a problem now, Professor," Jessica said quickly. "Emily is the most important thing in my life." "But they kicked you out because of her?" Walter asked, disbelieving. "She chose the streets, Professor," Michael replied. "No one told her to keep the pregnancy." The answer left Walter speechless. He had known Jessica for years and knew she'd never make a reckless decision. There was more to this story. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now back to the story. "Jessica, you said you stopped studying," Walter asked, trying to understand. "Not exactly stopped, Professor. I tried balancing school and the pregnancy my first year, but when Emily was born with some health issues, I had to focus entirely on her." "What kind of issues?" the professor asked, concerned. Emily lifted her head and answered matter-of-factly, "I have a blood disease, Grandpa Professor. Mom says I need medicine every day." "Sickle cell anemia," Jessica clarified, her voice weary. "It requires constant medical care and expensive medication." Walter felt the weight of the revelation. He knew Medicaid provided treatment, but it often couldn't cover all the needs of chronic patients. "And the family doesn't help with the costs?" the professor asked. "The family cut all ties with Jessica when she refused to resolve the situation before birth," Michael said, avoiding Emily's gaze. "But now you want to take the girl?" Walter asked, confused. Michael hesitated before answering. "Things have changed, Professor. Dad is sick and, well, he wants to meet his granddaughter before he passes," Jessica finished, her voice barely audible. The professor saw the conflict in Jessica's eyes. Even after years of rejection, there was still pain in her voice when she spoke of her father. "And you want Emily to go?" asked Walter. "It's not about what I want, Professor. It's about what's best for her." Emily stepped back slightly from her mother to look into her eyes. "Mommy, are you coming with me?" "No, sweetheart. It would just be you." "Then I don't want to go," the girl said with surprising determination for her age. Michael stepped closer again. "Emily, you'll have a pretty room, toys, new clothes." "I like my room with Mommy," the little girl replied. Walter wondered where exactly this room was. Observing Jessica's worn clothes and the way she carried herself, he suspected their situation was more dire than he'd imagined. "Jessica, where are you staying?" the professor asked gently. "We have a special little spot, don't we, Mommy?" Emily answered before Jessica could speak. "It's a temporary place, Professor," Jessica said quickly. "We're working on something better." Michael rolled his eyes. "She lives under the Brooklyn Bridge with her daughter. That's why the family wants to take responsibility for Emily." The revelation hit Walter like a punch to the gut. Jessica, the young woman who carried books like treasures and spoke about literature as if reciting poetry, was living on the streets with her sick daughter. "Jessica," the professor began, but she interrupted him. "Professor, I know what you're thinking, and I know I've disappointed you terribly, threw away every opportunity you helped me get. You haven't disappointed me, my dear. I'm worried about both of you." "That's why the family wants to help," Michael insisted. "Emily can have everything she needs. Private school, health insurance, proper medical care." "And me?" Jessica asked, her voice almost inaudible. "You made your choices, Jessica. Now it's time to think about what's best for Emily." Walter watched the dilemma unfolding before him. On one side, a family that seemingly had the means to give the child a better life. On the other, a mother who clearly loved her daughter above all else, but lived in precarious conditions. "May I ask why the family changed their minds after so many years?" the professor asked. Michael looked uncomfortable. "Dad's sick. He reconsidered some things." "What kind of illness?" "Cancer," Jessica replied. Michael told me the doctors don't give him much time. Emily tugged at her mother's coat sleeve. Mommy, is the grandpa I've never seen sick? Yes, honey. Is he like the grandpa in Central Park who always feeds the birds? Jessica smiled sadly. No, sweetheart. He's different. Walter realized there was far more complexity to this family situation than initially appeared. He decided he needed to understand the full story before forming any opinion. Michael, do you have time to talk? Not here in the park, but somewhere more private? Professor, we don't want to take up your time, Jessica said. You're not taking my time. You're giving purpose to my time. Michael checked his watch. I have to be back by 5. Mom's waiting for an answer. Then we have a few hours, the professor said. I know a diner nearby where we can talk properly. Jessica hesitated. Professor, I can't afford... Jessica, when you were my student, how many times did I buy you lunch when I noticed you were struggling? You were always so kind to me. And still am. Shall we? Emily clapped her hands. Mommy, can I have juice? Of course, my princess, Jessica replied, stroking her daughter's hair. As they walked through the streets of New York City, Walter noticed how Jessica shielded Emily from the crowd, always keeping the girl on the inner side of the sidewalk. Even in vulnerability, her maternal instincts remained sharp. The diner chosen by the professor was a simple place, mostly frequented by local workers. They settled at a table in the back, away from the other customers. Now, Jessica, tell me everything from the beginning, said Walter after they had ordered their food. Jessica looked at Emily, who was distracted watching the street activity through the window. Professor, it's a long and painful story. I have time and a shoulder to listen. Michael drummed his fingers on the table, impatient. Jessica, just tell him so the professor understands why the family's decision makes sense. Michael, let her speak at her own pace, Walter requested. Jessica took a deep breath. When I started at Columbia, Professor, I was over the moon. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of. Remember how I used to talk about wanting to be a literature professor like you? I remember perfectly. You already had a 5-year plan mapped out. That's right. I wanted to finish my undergrad, then my master's, and maybe even a PhD. I dreamed of teaching at a university. Emily turned to her mother. Mommy, what's a PhD? It's when someone studies very, very hard to become a great teacher, Jessica explained, kissing her daughter's forehead. Like Grandpa Professor? Walter smiled. Exactly, sweetheart. Well, in my second semester, Jessica continued, I met a guy from the law program, Ryan Campbell Harris. Harris? The professor repeated. Like the lawyer family? The same, Michael confirmed. One of the most traditional families in New York City. Ryan was different from the other boys I'd met, Jessica went on. He seemed genuinely interested in me, not just physically. We talked about books, about dreams, about the future. And you fell in love, Walter finished. Completely. He said he wanted to introduce me to his family, that he saw a future with me. He talked about trips we'd take together, about the children we'd have. Emily lifted her head. Mommy, were you talking about me before I was born? We were, sweetheart. Daddy used to imagine what you'd be like. Then why did he leave? Emily's question created an uncomfortable silence at the table. Jessica swallowed hard before answering. Sometimes people get scared of responsibilities, honey. Walter sensed there was far more pain in that simple answer than Jessica was willing to show in front of her daughter. Jessica, when did you find out about the pregnancy? The professor asked. At the end of my first year of college, I was panicking, Professor. I knew my parents wouldn't take it well, but Ryan reassured me. He said he'd take responsibility, that we'd get married. And what happened? Michael jumped in. His family found out and threatened to disinherit Ryan if he didn't break up with Jessica. They threatened more than that, Jessica added, her voice growing quieter. They said if he didn't leave me, they'd make sure I got expelled from the university. They could do that? Walter asked, outraged. Professor, the Harris family has influence all over New York City. They have major donors at Columbia, connections in the government, everywhere that matters. And Ryan? Ryan chose his family, Jessica replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Emily turned to her mother again. Mommy, didn't Daddy want me? Jessica hugged her daughter. Daddy did want you, sweetheart. But sometimes families make people make hard choices. Like how our family wants me to go away with them. Emily's sharpness surprised everyone at the table. Even as a child, she perfectly understood the complex family dynamics surrounding her. It is similar, yes, Jessica admitted. And are you going to give me away like Daddy gave you away? Emily's question struck Jessica like an arrow. Tears began to stream down the mother's face. Never, my daughter, never. Walter reached out and touched Jessica's arm. Keep going, my daughter. What happened after Ryan broke up with you? I tried to keep studying, Professor, even pregnant, even with all the pressure at home. My parents were furious. Dad said I dishonored the family. And when Emily was born? That's when everything fell apart. Emily was born premature and with sickle cell anemia. She needed constant care, frequent hospital stays. I couldn't go to class anymore. Didn't Columbia offer any kind of support? Professor, back then I didn't know I had rights. I was so young, alone, desperate. When I realized I'd lose the semester, I dropped out thinking I'd come back the next year. But you didn't. Emily got very sick in those first few years. Constant hospitalizations, expensive medications, specialist visits. I worked during the day selling beauty products door to door and stayed with her at night in the hospitals. Michael shook his head. And Mom and Dad didn't help at all. They said she'd made her bed and now had to lie in it. But you kept living at home? Walter asked. Until Emily turned 3, Jessica replied. Then Dad said he couldn't take it anymore, having to explain to friends why he had a single daughter with a sick child living at home. And you left. I left. I took Emily and a few clothes and walked out. Where did you go? First, I managed to rent a tiny room in a boarding house. But with Emily's treatment costs, I couldn't afford rent and her meds. I chose the meds. Walter's heart clenched. The young woman who had once passionately discussed literature had been forced to choose between shelter and her daughter's medication. And after the boarding house, we went to a public shelter, stayed there almost a year. Emily was more stable then, and I got a job at a factory. I was saving up for a better place. What happened? The factory shut down. It was during the economic crisis. Overnight, I was jobless again. Emily, who had stayed quiet for a few minutes, rejoined the conversation. Mommy, tell Grandpa Professor about our special little house. Jessica blushed. Emily, it's not really a little house. Yes, it is. We have our own bed, our things, and even a pretty view. Walter understood that Emily, with a child's innocence, had romanticized their life on the streets. Jessica, how long have you been living under the overpass? 2 years, she answered, almost whispering. And how do you get by? I make crafts, bracelets, necklaces, keychains, sell them downtown, in the subway when there's no enforcement, outside churches. And Emily's meds? Medicaid covers the basics, but sometimes I need to buy supplements and vitamins that help. When I have the money. And when you don't? Jessica didn't answer. She didn't need to. Walter knew there were days Emily went without her full medication. Michael, who had stayed silent during the story, finally spoke. Professor, now you see why the family wants to take responsibility for Emily. Jessica can't properly care for her. I can care for her, Jessica shot back, her voice firm for the first time. I love my daughter and do everything I can for her. Love doesn't buy medicine, Jessica, Michael said, and money doesn't buy love, Michael, she countered. Emily looked between them, clearly uneasy with the tension. Please don't fight, the girl pleaded. When you fight, my chest feels tight. Jessica immediately softened and pulled Emily close. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Uncle Michael and I were just talking. Walter observed the interaction and noticed how Emily reacted physically to emotional stress. Her health condition likely worsened under tense situations. Michael, may I ask a few questions about the family's proposal? Inquired the professor. Of course. Was Emily going to live with her parents? Yes. They have a large home with staff, a driver. Emily would have her own room, toys, access to the best doctors in New York City. And Jessica? Jessica, Well, she could visit on weekends. Could, Walter repeated. It would have to be arranged. Emily needs stability, routine. Too many visits from Jessica might confuse the child. Jessica clenched her fists. Confuse? I'm her mother, Michael. You are her mother, but you're not managing to fulfill that role properly. Emily stood up from her chair and went to Michael. Uncle, why do you want to take me away from Mommy? Michael visibly stiffened at his niece's direct question. Emily, it's not about taking you away. It's about giving you better opportunities. I don't want better opportunities. I want my Mommy. You're still too young to understand. I do understand, Emily interrupted, her voice rising. I understand you all want to take me from Mommy because you think she's not good enough. Emily, that's not... Yes, it is, the girl shouted, immediately breaking into violent coughs. Jessica rushed to her daughter, who was struggling to breathe. Emily, calm down, sweetheart. Breathe slowly. The girl clung to her mother, still coughing. Jessica began making circular motions on Emily's back, whispering soothing words. Do you have her medicine with you? Walter asked, concerned. Always, Jessica replied, pulling a small vial from her purse. She dropped a few doses onto Emily's tongue and continued the calming motions on her back. Better now, Princess? Jessica asked after a few minutes. Emily nodded, still nestled in her mother's lap. Walter watched the entire scene carefully. Jessica had handled Emily's episode with medical precision. She knew exactly what to do, which medication to use, how to comfort her daughter. Jessica, did you learn these techniques from doctors? The professor asked. Yes, in the early years, Emily had frequent episodes. I started attending all her appointments, reading about her condition, learning the warning signs. She practically became a nurse, Michael remarked, though without his earlier critical tone. More than that, Walter thought. Jessica had become an expert in her daughter's condition. Emily, are you feeling better? The professor asked. Yes, Grandpa Professor. Mommy always knows what to do when I get like this. And you trust Mommy? Absolutely. Mommy is the best mommy in the whole world. Walter looked at Michael, who seemed to be reconsidering. Michael, have you considered alternatives besides separating Emily from her mother? What do you mean? Well, your family clearly has resources. Why not help Jessica get properly settled so she can care for Emily with dignity? Professor, it's not that simple, Michael replied, though his voice was less certain. Why not? Because Jessica made choices that disappointed the family. Michael, Emily is 7. How long has it been since those choices? The professor's question made Michael pause. Almost 8 years. And in those 8 years, has Jessica proven to be an irresponsible mother? No, but has she shown she loves her daughter above all else? Yes. Has she demonstrated knowledge of Emily's medical needs? Yes. Then, what exactly is the problem with helping her provide a better life for both of them? Michael fell silent, clearly wrestling with something internally. Professor, there are things you don't understand about our family. Then explain it to me. Michael looked around the diner as if checking if anyone could hear them. My father is very sick. The cancer is advanced, and the doctors said he has at most a few months left. I'm so sorry to hear that. And my mother. My mother never got over the shame she felt when Jessica got pregnant. To her, having our granddaughter live with us would be a way to make amends. Make amends for what? What people in our social class think about our family. Walter began to understand the complexity of the situation. It wasn't just about taking care of Emily. It was about saving the family's reputation. And what does Jessica think about this? Jessica doesn't know everything, Michael admitted. She thinks it's just about giving Emily a better life. But it's not. Not entirely. Jessica, who had been focused on Emily, looked up. What are you two talking about? Michael hesitated. Jessica, there are some things I need to tell you that you don't know. The seriousness in her brother's tone made Jessica sit up straight. What things? About Dad's will, and the real reasons the family wants Emily with us. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Jessica felt a chill in her stomach. She'd always suspected there was more behind the family's sudden change of heart about Emily. What's this about a will, Michael? Dad updated his will last month, and he included Emily as an heir. What do you mean, an heir? He left 20% of the inheritance to Emily, but there's a condition. Walter leaned forward, intrigued. What condition? Emily has to be under the family's care to inherit. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica processed the information with a mix of shock and anger. You want Emily because of money? She asked, her voice trembling. It's not just about the money, Jessica. Yes, it is, Michael. That's exactly what this is about. Emily, sensing the rising tension, clung tighter to her mother. Mommy, are you upset again? Jessica took a deep breath, trying to calm herself for Emily's sake. I'm a little upset, sweetheart, but it'll pass. Jessica, you're not understanding, Michael continued. With this inheritance, Emily's future would be secure. Education, medical care, everything. And I'd lose my daughter. But she'd be financially safe. Michael, do you have children? Walter asked. No, not yet. Then let me explain something about being a parent. No amount of money in the world makes up for the absence of a mother's or father's unconditional love. But Professor, look at their situation. Jessica is raising Emily on the streets. And why hasn't the family helped Jessica get out of this situation? Because it would be more complicated. Complicated how? Michael hesitated again. Because my mother still hasn't forgiven Jessica for what happened. To her, taking responsibility for Emily is a way to help her granddaughter without admitting she was wrong about Jessica. The truth was finally coming out. Walter shook his head, now understanding the dysfunctional family dynamic. So you'd rather separate a mother from her child than simply admit you were wrong? Professor, it's not that simple. Yes, Michael, it's exactly that simple. Jessica was visibly shaken by the revelations. Michael, I always knew Mom and Dad never forgave me. But using Emily as a bargaining chip, that's low even for them. Jessica, they really want what's best for Emily. They want what's best for their own conscience, not Emily. Emily lifted her head and looked at her mother. Mommy, what's an inheritance? It's money grandparents leave for their grandchildren when they're no longer here, my love. And they want to give me money. They do. But only if I live far away from you? That's right. Emily thought for a few seconds with the seriousness of an adult. Then I don't want that money. The girl's answer even surprised Michael. Emily, you're still too young to understand. I do understand, Uncle. I understand that you want to buy my mommy to give me money, but my mommy isn't for sale. Emily's words left all the adults speechless. A 7-year-old had summed up the whole situation with a clarity they couldn't muster. Walter smiled, proud of the girl. Emily, you're very smart. Mommy always teaches me that some things are more important than money. And what's more important than money? Love, friendship, taking care of each other. Those things. Jessica kissed her daughter's forehead, moved. Michael, you heard Emily. She doesn't want to stay with you. Jessica, but think about her future. With the inheritance, she could study at the best schools, go to college abroad. And what about me, Michael? In her future, where would I be? You'd be at peace knowing you did what's best for her. What's best for her is me, Michael. It's me taking care of her, loving her, being present in her life. Walter decided to step in. Michael, may I make a suggestion? Of course, Professor. How about we go back to the original proposal? The family helps Jessica get properly settled, Emily stays with her mother, and everyone stays close enough for your father to meet his granddaughter in his final months. Professor, I wish it were that simple. But my mother... Your mother what, Michael? My mother said if Jessica comes back home, she'll move out. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. The family matriarch was using emotional blackmail to get her way. And your father, what does he think? My father is very sick, Professor. He doesn't have the energy for family fights. He just wants to meet his granddaughter before he goes. Then why not make that easier? Because my mother said she'll only accept Emily in the house if it's permanent. without Jessica. Jessica shook her head in disbelief. Michael, do you realize how cruel this is? You're asking me to give up my daughter to satisfy your mother's wounded pride. Jessica, I know it's hard. Hard! Michael, you're asking me to tear my heart out of my chest. Emily stirred in her mother's lap again. Mommy, you're talking about your heart again. Does your chest hurt? No, my love, it's just a way of saying it. Mommy, if they take me away, will your heart stop working? Emily's innocent question made Jessica start to cry. It won't stop working, Princess, but it will hurt a lot, so much. Then I won't let them take me. Michael watched the interaction between mother and daughter with a conflicted expression. Professor, what would you do in my place? I'd try to convince my mother to rethink things. Michael, your mother is about to lose her husband. Do you really think she wants to lose her daughter and granddaughter too? I don't know, Professor. My mother is complicated. All mothers are complicated, Michael. But deep down they want what's best for the family. My mother thinks what's best for the family is keeping up appearances. Walter sighed. There was much work to be done to reunite this family. Michael, can you give me your parents' phone number? What for? So I can talk to them. Jessica was surprised. Professor, you don't have to get involved in this. Jessica, when you were my student, I got involved in your life to give you opportunities. Now I'll get involved again to help you keep your daughter. But my parents won't want to talk to you. Yes, they will, Michael said. They've always respected teachers. Then give me their number. Michael hesitated. Professor, if you can convince my mother, it would be a really good solution, but I don't have much hope. Leave the hope to me, Michael. While Michael wrote down his parents' number on a napkin, Emily got up and went to Walter. Grandpa, Professor, are you going to help Mommy? Yes, sweetheart. And will you talk to my grandparents I've never met? I will. Can you tell them I want to meet them, but I don't want to live far from Mommy? Of course I can. Emily went back to Jessica's lap. Mommy, Grandpa Professor is going to fix everything. Jessica smiled sadly. I hope so, sweetheart. I hope so. Walter tucked the paper with the number into his pocket. Jessica, where are you staying tonight? At our usual spot, Professor. What if it starts raining? We have a tarp, and Emily has a really warm coat. Jessica's casual answer about sleeping on the street made Walter's heart ache. He made a decision. You're staying at my place tonight. Professor, we can't. Yes, you can. I live alone in a 2-bedroom house. You'll stay until we sort this out. Professor, that's so kind. Jessica, it's not kindness, it's necessity, my need to help you. Emily clapped her hands. Mommy, we get to stay in a real house tonight. Just for tonight, sweetheart. We'll see, said Walter. First, I'll take you home, then I'll call your parents, Michael. Are you sure about this, Professor? I am. And when you get home, talk to your mother. Prepare her for the call. I'll try. Don't try, Michael, do it. Emily deserves to meet her grandparents, your parents deserve to meet their granddaughter, and Jessica deserves a chance to rebuild her relationship with her family. What if it doesn't work? If it doesn't, we'll find another solution. But it has to be one that keeps Emily with her mother. Michael nodded, looking more hopeful than when they'd arrived at the diner. Professor, can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you getting so involved in this? Walter looked at Jessica and Emily, then back at Michael. Because 20 years ago, I helped a brilliant young woman get a scholarship. And today I found out life has been unfair to her. As a professor and as a human being, I have a moral duty to try and fix that injustice. But you're retired. You could be enjoying your retirement in peace. Michael, do you know the greatest reward of being a teacher? No. It's seeing your former students become fulfilled and happy. Jessica isn't fulfilled or happy, so my job as her teacher isn't done yet. Jessica wiped away the tears that had started falling again. Professor, I don't deserve so much kindness from you. Jessica, you deserve this and more, and I'll make sure you and Emily get the chance to be happy. They finished their meals in a more hopeful mood. Emily was excited about sleeping in a real house. Jessica was moved by her old professor's generosity, and Michael seemed to be reconsidering the whole family situation. When they left the diner, the sun was setting over New York City. The downtown streets were emptying as workers headed home. "Professor, is your place far from here?" Jessica asked. "Not too far. I live in Greenwich Village. We'll take the subway." "Mommy, you know how to ride the subway, right?" Emily asked. "Yes, sweetie. We've taken it a few times." As they walked to the station, Walter noticed how Jessica cared for Emily. Even in such a vulnerable situation, she kept her dignity and constant attention on her daughter's needs. "Jessica, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course, Professor." "Did you ever try to find Ryan after Emily was born?" Jessica was silent for a few moments before answering. "I tried once when Emily was a year old and very sick. I was desperate, with no money for the medicine. And what happened? He refused to see me, sent a security guard to remove me from the office door where he worked. Did he see Emily? No. The guard didn't even let me inside the building. Emily, who was walking hand in hand with her mother, asked, "Mommy, does Daddy know I exist?" "He does, sweetheart." "Then why doesn't he come see me?" "Because sometimes adults make choices children can't understand. I wanted to meet him. I know, Princess." Walter realized there was another layer of pain in that story. Emily was growing up without a father, and Jessica carried all the responsibility alone. When they reached the subway, Walter bought tickets for everyone. On the platform, Emily was fascinated by the movement of people and the arriving trains. "Mommy, there are so many people here." "There are. They're coming home from work." "How did you come home when you worked?" "By bus. It was cheaper." "And why did you stop working?" "Because you got sick, and I needed to stay with you at the hospital." Emily thought about the answer. "Was it my fault you lost your job?" "No," Jessica replied immediately. "It was never your fault, my love. You didn't choose to get sick." "But if I hadn't gotten sick, would you still be working?" "Emily, listen carefully to what Mommy is about to say. You're the most important thing in my life. I chose to take care of you because I love you more than anything. It wasn't your fault or mine. It was a choice made out of love." Walter noticed how Jessica, even in such a precarious situation, managed to provide emotional security for Emily. It was clear the little girl was growing up loved and protected, despite the difficult circumstances. The train arrived, and they found seats. During the ride, Emily observed everything with curiosity. "Grandpa Professor, do you live alone?" "I do, sweetheart." "Why?" "Because my wife passed away a few years ago, and our children live far away." "Did your wife leave like Mommy's daddy?" "No, Emily, my wife passed away." "What does passed away mean?" Jessica quickly intervened. "It's when someone goes to heaven and doesn't come back, my love." "Oh, and you're all alone in the big house?" "I am. But sometimes I get visits from former students, like Mommy." "Exactly like Mommy." Emily smiled and settled more comfortably on the train seat. "Grandpa Professor, does your house have a backyard?" "It has a small backyard with some plants." "Is there room to play?" "There is." "Mommy, we'll get to play in the backyard." Jessica smiled at Emily's excitement. It had been so long since the little girl had a proper space to play. When they arrived at the Greenwich Village station, Walter guided them through the neighborhood streets to his house. It was a simple but well-kept home with a small garden in front. "Wow, what a beautiful house," Emily exclaimed. "Thank you, sweetheart. Shall we go in?" Walter opened the door and turned on the lights. The house was cozy with well-preserved antique furniture and books scattered everywhere. "Professor, your home is lovely," Jessica said. "Thank you. Make yourselves at home. Let me show you where you'll sleep." He led them to a room with a double bed and a single bed. "This was my children's room when they were little. You can stay here." Emily ran to the single bed and flopped onto it. "Mommy, look how soft the bed is." Jessica was moved by her daughter's happiness. "Professor, how can we thank you?" "Don't thank me. Just rest and let me handle this family situation." "Will you really call my parents?" "Yes, still today." "Professor, if they're rude to you..." "Jessica, I've dealt with difficult parents for 40 years in my career. I know how to talk to them." Emily came running back to the living room. "Grandpa Professor, do you have storybooks?" "I have many. Do you like stories?" "So much. Mom always tells me stories before bed." "What kind of stories?" "Stories about brave princesses, people who overcame hardships, families reuniting." Walter looked at Jessica, understanding that she used the stories to give Emily hope. "Emily, would you like to see my books?" "Can I?" "Of course." Walter took Emily to a shelf full of children's books. "These are from when my kids were little. You can pick one for us to read before bed." Emily chose a book about a girl who finds her family after a long search. Walter smiled, noticing that even in her book choices, Emily showed her need for family stability. "Good choice, sweetheart. We'll read it after dinner." "Are we eating here?" "Yes, we are. I'll make something tasty for you both." As Walter headed to the kitchen, Jessica followed him. "Professor, I can help with dinner." "Please do. It'll be nice to have company in the kitchen." While preparing a simple meal, Jessica took the chance to talk more privately with Walter. "Professor, I'm scared of what might happen when you call my parents." "What kind of fear?" "Fear that they'll shut down even more. Fear that it'll make things worse for Emily." "Jessica, worse how? Your situation is already very tough." "I know, but at least Emily is with me. If my parents get angry, they might try other ways to take her from me." "What other ways?" "Michael mentioned once that they could claim I'm not fit to care for her properly." "And are you not caring for her properly?" "I do everything I can, Professor, but living on the streets." "Jessica, proper care isn't about money. It's about love, protection, guidance, being present, and you do that perfectly." "But would that be enough in a legal battle?" Jessica's question raised a real concern. Walter knew the legal system often prioritized financial stability over emotional bonds. "Jessica, let's stay positive. I'll talk to your parents and try to find a solution that works for everyone. And if you can't, if talking doesn't work, we'll look for other options." "What options?" "Well, is your scholarship at Columbia still available?" "Professor, I dropped out 8 years ago. They must have cancelled it long ago." "Not always. Students who leave for family health reasons sometimes get their enrollment reinstated." "Do you think it's possible?" "It's worth looking into. If you can go back to school, it'll show your commitment to the future and improve your standing in any external evaluation." Jessica stopped chopping vegetables and looked at Walter. "Professor, I don't even know if I can still study. It's been so long now." "Jessica, you've always been brilliant. That brilliance doesn't fade. It just lies dormant." "But how would I study while taking care of Emily?" "There are daycares at the university, support programs for student mothers. We'll look into the options." Emily appeared in the kitchen. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "We were talking about the possibility of Mom going back to school." "School where?" "At the university where Mom studied before you were born." "Can I come too?" "Maybe, sweetheart. We'll have to see." "That's so cool." "Mom, are you going to be a teacher like Grandpa Professor?" "Maybe, honey." Emily went back to the living room, excited by the idea. Walter noticed how positively she responded to her mother studying. "Jessica, see how Emily supports the idea?" "I do. She always encourages me to study more, as she says." "So, why didn't you try going back before?" "Professor, how could I go back to school while living on the streets? How would I pay for transportation, supplies, food? I understand, but now things might be different." "How?" "If we can resolve the family issue, you'd have support. And there are student assistance programs." "Professor, do you really think it's possible to rebuild my life after so long?" "Jessica, you're only 26. Your life is just beginning." Professor Walter's remark made Jessica realize how old and hopeless she had felt. At 26, she still had time to reshape her future. "Professor, if I managed to go back to school, would Emily be proud of me?" "Jessica, Emily is already proud of you, but I imagine she'd be even prouder." They finished preparing dinner and called Emily to the table. The little girl was beaming at eating at a real table with real plates in a real home. "Grandpa Professor, do you eat like this every day?" "What do you mean, sweetheart?" at a table with a fork and knife with warm food. Emily's question revealed the stark contrast between her life with Jessica and the life a child should have. Yes, Emily, and from now on, you'll eat like this too. Every day? Every day. Emily smiled and went back to eating eagerly. Walter noticed she ate quickly, like someone unsure of when her next meal would come. Emily, you can take your time. There's enough food for everyone. Are you sure? Absolutely. Jessica gently intervened. Emily, here isn't like other places. Here, you can eat peacefully. The girl slowed down and began savoring her food. After dinner, Walter kept his promise to read the book Emily had chosen. The three settled in the living room, and the professor began narrating the story of the little girl who reunited with her family. As he read, Emily asked questions and made comments that revealed her precocious maturity and her longing for family security. Grandpa Professor, why did the girl in the story lose her family? Because sometimes families go through hard times and end up separated. Like Mommy was from her grandparents? Something like that, yes. But in the end, do they find each other? Yes, they find each other and stay together forever. Do you think our story will have a happy ending too? Walter glanced at Jessica before answering. I think so, Emily. I think so. After the story, Jessica took Emily for a bath. Walter used the moment to gather his thoughts about the conversation he'd soon have with Jessica's parents. When they returned, Emily was in pajamas, her hair still damp. Mommy, it's been so long since I had a bath in a real tub. I know, sweetheart, was it nice? So nice, and the water was warm. Walter was moved, realizing how small things he took for granted were immense luxuries to Emily. Emily, are you ready for bed? I am, but can I ask one more thing first? Of course. Will we still be here tomorrow? Yes, you will. And the day after? That too. For how long? Walter looked at Jessica. For as long as you need, sweetheart. Emily grinned and ran to hug Walter. Thank you, Grandpa Professor. You're so kind. You're welcome, dear. Now get some rest. Tomorrow's a big day. Jessica took Emily to the bedroom. Walter listened to their hushed voices, likely Jessica telling stories to lull her to sleep. When the room fell silent, Walter picked up the paper with Jessica's parents' number. It was time to make the call that could change their family's future. He dialed, and after a few rings, a woman's voice answered. Hello? Good evening. May I speak with Mrs. Margaret Wilson? Speaking. Who is this? My name is Walter Thompson. I'm a retired professor and was Jessica's high school teacher. There was a long pause before the reply. What do you want? I'd like to speak with you about Jessica and Emily. There's nothing to discuss about this matter. Mrs. Margaret, today I ran into Jessica and Emily at the park. I must say I'm very concerned about their situation. Their situation is a consequence of Jessica's choices. Ma'am, Emily is a child. She didn't make any choices. Professor, with all due respect, this isn't your concern. Mrs. Margaret, Jessica was my student for 3 years. I helped her secure a scholarship. She's like a daughter to me. Walter realized he needed to change his approach. Mrs. Margaret, may I speak with your husband? My husband is very ill. He can't take calls. I understand. Then let me speak directly with you. Michael told me about the will and your proposal to take custody of Emily. And what about it? Pam, I'm calling to suggest an alternative. What alternative? What if instead of separating Emily from her mother, you helped Jessica get properly settled? Professor, Jessica made her choices 8 years ago. She didn't want our help back then. Mrs. Margaret, forgive my frankness, but from what I understand, you didn't offer help. You gave her an ultimatum. We offered the proper solution for the situation. And what was that solution? That she resolved the problem before it grew worse. Walter felt anger rising in his throat but controlled himself. Ma'am, you're talking about Emily, a 7-year-old child, your granddaughter. Professor, you don't need to explain to me who Emily is. Then explain to me how you can want to separate her from the mother who loves and cares for her so deeply. Jessica isn't capable of properly caring for Emily. Ma'am, Today I watched Jessica care for Emily during a health crisis. She acted with medical precision, knows her daughter's needs exactly, and shows unconditional love. Isn't that proper care? Proper care includes providing housing, food, education, medical treatment. And couldn't you help Jessica provide those things while keeping Emily with her mother? Professor, Jessica deeply disappointed us. We raised her with values, gave her an education, opportunities, and she threw it all away. Ma'am, Jessica fell in love and got pregnant. That's not throwing her life away, it's living her life. It is throwing your life away when you have responsibilities and commitments. And Emily? What responsibilities does Emily have in this story? The question was met with a long silence on the line. Emily is innocent, Margaret finally admitted. Then why not help both of them instead of separating them? Because it would be complicated. Complicated how? Professor, there are things you don't understand about our family. Then help me understand. Margaret hesitated before answering. We have a social standing to maintain. What happened with Jessica caused us great embarrassment. And 8 years later, you're still worried about what others think. Professor, some things don't change. Mrs. Margaret, your husband is sick and may not have much time. Do you really want to waste that time on wounded pride? It's not about pride. Yes, ma'am, it is exactly about pride. And while you nurture that pride, Jessica and Emily are suffering unnecessarily. Professor, we offered a solution. We take responsibility for Emily. A solution that destroys the family instead of rebuilding it. Sometimes, sacrifices must be made for the greater good. And who decides what the greater good is? You or Emily? We are the adults in the family. And isn't Jessica an adult? Jessica has shown she lacks the maturity to make proper decisions. Mrs. Margaret, Jessica raised Emily alone for 7 years, cared for a child with special medical needs, worked, sacrificed, loved unconditionally. Doesn't that show maturity? Walter noticed he was managing to make Margaret reflect on the situation. Professor Walter, even if I wanted to help Jessica, my husband included Emily in the will on the condition that she remains under our care. Could that condition be changed? Theoretically, yes, but my husband is very weak. Mrs. Margaret, may I suggest a visit? So Emily can meet her grandparents and we can talk in person about a solution that benefits everyone? A visit? Yes. Jessica, Emily and I could come by tomorrow. You'd get to know Emily, she'd meet her grandparents, and we could discuss alternatives. I don't know if my husband has the energy for visitors. Ma'am, he won't need to exert himself. Emily is a sweet and intelligent child. Her presence might even do him good. Margaret fell silent for a few minutes. Professor Walter, I'll speak with my husband. If he agrees, you can come tomorrow afternoon. Perfect. And ma'am? Yes? Keep an open mind to possibilities. Families are meant to unite, not divide. I'll try. Thank you. I'll wait for your call tomorrow. Walter hung up the phone with a mix of hope and apprehension. Margaret hadn't completely shut down the conversation, but there was still much work ahead. He walked to the room where Jessica and Emily were sleeping. Through the slightly open door, he could see them curled up in bed, finally resting safely. Tomorrow would be a decisive day for their future. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The next morning, Walter woke up early and prepared a special breakfast for his guests. When Jessica and Emily came down to the kitchen, they found the table set with fresh bread, fruit, scrambled eggs, and orange juice. Grandpa, Professor, what's the occasion? Emily asked, her eyes sparkling with joy. It's the Good Morning celebration, Walter replied, smiling. Jessica looked at the generous spread with emotion. Professor, you didn't have to go to all this trouble. It wasn't trouble, it was a pleasure. It's been so long since I made breakfast for a family. Are we your family now? Emily asked innocently. You're very special to me, sweetheart. During breakfast, Walter told Jessica about the phone call with her mother. She agreed to the visit? Jessica asked, surprised. She said she'd talk to your father. She should call this morning with an answer. Professor, I'm nervous. It's been 8 years since I've seen my parents. It's natural to be nervous, but remember, you're not alone anymore. I'll be with you. Emily, who had been focused on spreading jam on her bread, looked up. Mommy, are you nervous to meet Grandpa and Grandma? A little, yes. Why? Because Mommy and Grandpa had a fight a long time ago. But now you're going to make up? We hope so, Princess. If you make up, can I call them Grandpa and Grandma? Jessica glanced at Walter, unsure how to respond. Of course you can, sweetheart, the professor answered. Grandpas and grandmas exist to love their grandchildren. Just like you, Grandpa Professor. Exactly like me. Emily smiled and went back to eating her bread. The girl's ability to see the bright side of things constantly amazed Walter. The phone rang around 10 in the morning. Walter answered quickly. Professor Walter? It was Margaret's voice. Yes, Mrs. Margaret. I spoke with my husband. He would very much like to meet Emily. That's wonderful. And the visit? You can come today at 2 in the afternoon. But Professor Walter... Yes? My husband is very weak. The visit can't be long. I completely understand it'll be a brief and peaceful visit. And Professor Walter? Yes? Jessica. Is she okay? The question revealed that, despite all the resentment, Margaret still cared about her daughter. She's doing well, Mrs. Margaret. She's been an extraordinary mother. I want to see her too. She'll be happy to hear that. After hanging up, Walter turned to Jessica and Emily. You have a meeting at 2 this afternoon. Jessica turned pale. Professor, I don't know if I'm ready. No one is ever completely ready for family reconciliations, but you'll be fine. Mommy, are you scared? Asked Emily. A little, sweetheart. Do you want me to hold your hand? Yes, I do. Then it's settled. I'll take care of Mommy, and Grandpa Professor will take care of both of us. Emily's simplicity lightened the moment. Walter smiled, seeing how the little girl could be a source of strength for her mother. The rest of the morning was spent preparing for the visit. Walter lent Jessica nicer clothes, making her look more presentable, though her face still bore the marks of the suffering from recent years. Professor, I don't know what to say to them, Jessica confessed as she got ready. Speak the truth. Tell them about your life, about Emily, about your feelings. What if they don't forgive me? Jessica, forgiveness isn't something you ask for or give. Forgiveness is something you build day by day with actions and mutual understanding. I'm so sorry I let them down. You didn't let anyone down. You made decisions based on love, and that's never a reason for disappointment. Emily appeared in the living room wearing a dress Walter had bought her that morning. How do I look? She asked, twirling to show off the dress. You look beautiful, Princess, said Jessica, her voice choked with emotion. Pretty enough to meet my grandparents? More than enough. At exactly 2 o'clock, they stood at the door of Jessica's parents' house. It was an elegant residence in the Upper East Side, with a well-kept garden and classic architecture. Emily admired the house in awe. Mommy, is this where you lived when you were little? Yes, it is. It's a really pretty house. It is. Walter rang the doorbell. After a few minutes, Margaret opened the door. She was a woman in her 60s, well-dressed, with impeccably styled silver hair. When she saw Jessica, her eyes filled with tears. Jessica, she murmured. Hi, Mom. The two women stared at each other for a few seconds, 8 years of separation weighing between them. Emily broke the silence. Are you my grandma? She asked naturally. Margaret looked down at the girl and her face lit up. And you must be Emily? Yes, and you're really pretty, Grandma. Emily's spontaneous comment drew a smile from Margaret. Please come in, she said, stepping aside. The inside of the house was even more impressive. Quality antique furniture, artwork on the walls, Persian rugs on the floor. Emily looked around with curiosity, but without intimidation. Richard is in the library, said Margaret. He's eager to meet Emily. They were led to a spacious library, its floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books. In an armchair by the window sat a thin man, visibly weakened by illness but with eyes still bright and intelligent. "Dad," said Jessica, her voice trembling. Richard looked at his daughter with a mix of emotion and sadness. "Jessica, my girl." Emily approached the armchair without fear. "Are you my grandpa?" she asked. "Yes, I am, sweetheart. And you're even prettier than I imagined." "Thank you, Grandpa. Mommy said you're not feeling well." "That's right, Emily, but I'm so happy to meet you. Do you want me to tell you about myself?" Richard smiled, charmed by his granddaughter's spontaneity. "I'd love that." Emily began sharing about her life with ease, talking about her favorite games, how she helped her mum, and the books she loved to listen to. Throughout the account, Richard watched her with growing attention and affection. Walter observed the interaction and noticed that Emily was winning over the grandparents naturally. The girl had a special charm that melted away any resistance. "Emily, do you like studying?" asked Richard. "I love it. Mommy teaches me lots of things." "What kind of things?" "Reading, writing, math, about places in the world, about animals." "Is your mommy a good teacher?" "The best. She knows everything." Richard looked at Jessica with pride. "She's always been very smart," he said to Emily. "I know. Mommy always tells me she studied a lot when she was young." "And do you want to study a lot too?" "Yes. I want to be just like Mommy and Grandpa the Professor." "Grandpa the Professor?" asked Margaret. "That's what I call Mr. Walter," explained Emily, pointing to the professor. "He's really nice to us." Walter realized it was time to address the main purpose of the visit. "Richard, Margaret, I came here to talk about a situation that could benefit the whole family." "We're listening," said Richard. "Emily is clearly a loved and well-cared-for child, thanks to Jessica. At the same time, you have the means to significantly improve their quality of life." "Go on," Margaret urged. "Instead of separating Emily from her mother, why not help Jessica get back on her feet? She could return to school, pursue a career, and give Emily the life she deserves without taking away what she loves most, her mother." Richard looked at Emily, who was flipping through a book he had given her. "Jessica," he said, his voice weak but firm, "would you like to go back to school?" "Very much, Dad. It's always been my dream." "And do you think you could balance school with taking care of Emily?" "I'd try my best." "It's not about trying, Jessica. It's about succeeding." "I would succeed, Dad, I really would." Margaret interrupted the conversation. "Richard, but if Jessica goes back to school, who would take care of Emily during classes?" "There are university daycare centers," said Walter, "and you could help with that too." "How so?" "You could hire a nanny for the times Jessica is at college. Emily would spend part of her time at daycare, part with the nanny, and always come home to her mother." Emily looked up from her book. "Home? Are we going to have a home?" "If all goes well, yes," replied Walter. "A house like this?" the girl asked, glancing around the library. "Maybe not this big, but a home where you'll both be happy." Emily smiled and went back to her book. Richard watched his granddaughter for a few moments before speaking. "Margaret, I want to change the will." "What do you mean?" "I want Emily to have a right to the inheritance no matter where she lives, as long as she's well cared for. And I want to add a clause to help Jessica with her studies." Margaret looked visibly surprised. "Richard, are you sure?" "Absolutely. Look at Emily, Margaret. Look how happy, healthy, and well-mannered she is. Jessica has done an exceptional job raising our granddaughter. But people will what, Margaret? Criticize us for choosing to support our family instead of tearing it apart?" Walter could see Richard was on their side, but Margaret still hesitated. "Margaret," he said, "may I ask you a personal question?" "Go ahead." "Have you missed Jessica these past 8 years?" Margaret lowered her eyes. "Every day." "And how would you feel if Emily grew up far from you, never really knowing you?" I wouldn't want that. Then why not build a solution where everyone stays close, where Emily gets to know her grandparents, where Jessica rebuilds her life, and where you play an active role in raising your granddaughter?" Emily, who had stopped pretending to read, looked at Margaret. "Grandma, do you want me to live here far away from Mommy?" The girl's direct question left Margaret speechless. "Emily, it's complicated." "Why is it complicated? If you love me and I love you and you love Mommy, You think we love your mommy? Margaret asked. Of course, your family. Families love each other even when they fight. The simplicity of Emily's logic made Margaret start to cry. Emily, come here, she said. The girl came closer and Margaret pulled her into a hug. You're right, my sweet granddaughter. Families love each other even when they fight. So you still love mommy? We always have. And will you stop fighting? Margaret looked at Jessica. We'll try, sweetheart. Emily broke the hug and ran to Jessica. Mommy, Grandma said she loves you. Jessica approached her mother for the first time in 8 years. Mum, I'm so sorry for everything that happened. I'm sorry too, my daughter. The two embraced, finally releasing years of pain and longing. Richard watched the scene with tears in his eyes. Professor Walter, thank you for bringing my family back together. Don't thank me. Families are meant to stay together. Seeing everyone emotional, Emily decided it was time to lighten the mood. Grandpa, can you show me more books? Of course, sweetheart. I have plenty of books you might like. While Richard showed Emily the books, Walter spoke privately with Margaret and Jessica. Now we need to plan the next steps, he said. What steps? Jessica asked. First, finding a suitable place for you to live. Second, reactivating your university enrollment. Third, setting up a care routine for Emily that allows you to study. Hi, Professor, that sounds so complicated, Jessica said. It's not complicated when you have family support, Margaret replied. Jessica, we'll help with all of it. Mum, are you sure? Absolutely. We've missed 8 years of your lives. We won't waste any more time. And Dad, does he agree? Your father feels guilty for not supporting you back then. He wants to make up for it now. Walter smiled as he watched the family reconcile. Margaret, do you have any property Jessica and Emily could use? We have an apartment we bought as an investment. It's been empty for a few months. Would it work for them? It has 2 bedrooms. It's in a good neighborhood, close to schools and public transport. Perfect. What about expenses? We'll cover everything until Jessica graduates and finds work. Jessica couldn't believe what she was hearing. You'd really do that? Jessica, you're our daughter. Emily is our granddaughter. It's our duty and our joy to help you. Emily came running back from the other side of the library. Mommy, Grandpa gave me 3 books to take home. What books are those, Princess? One about brave princesses, one about families reuniting, and one about girls who chase their dreams. Walter laughed at the coincidence of Richard's choices. Great picks, Emily. Grandpa said when I learn to read better, he'll give me more books. And do you want to learn to read better? Yes. Mommy teaches me, but now Grandpa can teach me too. Richard joined the group visibly tired but happy. Professor Walter, I don't know how to thank you for what you've done for our family. Richard, I just helped the reunion happen. The love was already there. Still, thank you. Margaret stood up from the armchair. I'll make a snack for everyone. Jessica, can you help me? Of course, Mom. Mother and daughter went to the kitchen together, taking the chance to talk more privately. Emily stayed with Richard as he showed her more books. Walter watched the scene with satisfaction. The family was coming back together naturally, as if the 8 years apart had just been a bad dream that was finally over. In the kitchen, Margaret and Jessica chatted while making sandwiches and juice. Jessica, can you forgive me for not supporting you back then? Mum, I understand why you reacted that way. I was so young, you were scared. No, Jessica. We acted out of pride, not fear, and that was wrong. What matters is that we're together now. How did you manage to raise Emily alone all these years? Love, Mom. Just love. When you truly love someone, you find strength you didn't know you had. Emily is an extraordinary girl. She is. She gave me the strength to keep going during the hardest times. Jessica, can you tell me about the last few years? How did you manage? Jessica hesitated, not wanting to worry her mother with difficult details. It was challenging, Mom. Tell me the truth, sweetheart. Jessica took a deep breath and began recounting the years of hardship, always focusing on how Emily kept her motivated. Margaret listened with tears in her eyes, feeling increasingly guilty for her absence. Jessica, I'll never forgive myself for letting you go through that alone. Mom, blaming yourself for the past won't help. Let's focus on the future. You're wiser than I am, my dear. Motherhood teaches you a lot, Mom. They returned to the library with snacks. Emily was sitting on Richard's lap listening to him read a story. "Grandpa reads so well," the little girl exclaimed when she saw her mom and grandma approaching. "He's always been a great storyteller," said Jessica. "Mummy, can I come here all the time to listen to stories?" "Of course, sweetheart. Whenever you want." "And can I sleep over sometimes?" Jessica looked at her parents, unsure how to respond. "Of course you can," said Margaret. "This has always been your home too." Emily clapped her hands excitedly. "That's so cool. Now I have two homes." "Two home?" asked Richard. "The new home we're moving into and Grandma and Grandpa's house." "Actually, 3 homes," Walter corrected. "My home is always yours whenever you need it." 3 homes, Emily cheered. "I'm the luckiest girl in the world." The little girl's joy spread to all the adults. Walter realized he'd achieved far more than he'd imagined when he decided to help Jessica and Emily. When it was time to leave, it took several goodbyes. Emily didn't want to let go of her new books or stop talking to her grandparents. "Grandpa, Grandma, will you miss me?" "So much," Margaret replied. "So, can I come back tomorrow?" "Of course, and we'll start getting your new home ready." "Really? Really?" Emily ran to hug Richard first, then Margaret. "Thank you for being my grandparents." "Thank you for being our granddaughter," Richard answered. On the way back to Walter's house, Emily chatted excitedly about everything she'd experienced. "Mommy, did you see how many stories Grandpa knows?" "I did." "And how Grandma makes the best sandwiches?" "I saw." "And they're so nice." "They are, sweetheart." "Mommy, are you happy?" Jessica looked at her daughter with shining eyes. "I'm happier than I've been in a long time, my love." "Me too. What about you, Grandpa Professor?" "I'm proud of both of you," Walter replied. "Why?" "Because you faced hardships with courage and love, and now you're being rewarded." "What does rewarded mean?" "It's when good things happen to people who deserve good things." "So we deserve to have a family." "You always have, dear. Sometimes it just takes a while for things to fall into place." During dinner at Walter's, they planned their next steps. Margaret had called to confirm the apartment would be ready in a week, and Richard had contacted a lawyer to update his will. "Professor, can I go with you to the university tomorrow?" Jessica asked. "Of course, we'll try to reactivate your enrollment." "What if it doesn't work?" "If it doesn't, we'll try other universities. What matters is you going back to school." "Mommy's going back to school," exclaimed Emily. "Just like a big girl." "Exactly like a big girl," laughed Walter. "And can I come along sometimes?" "Of course. There's a little school for kids at the university." "A school inside the university?" "That's right." "How cool. I'll get to study in a huge place." Walter watched Emily with affection. The girl was blossoming before his eyes, now that she had security and future prospects. "Emily, do you want to be a teacher like me and your mum?" "Yes, but I also want to be a doctor to take care of kids who get sick like I did." "A pediatrician?" "That's it." "Why do you want to be a doctor?" "Because when I was sick, the nice doctors helped me. I want to help other kids too." Jessica was moved by her daughter's answer. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Mommy, if I become a doctor, I can take better care of you when you get old. You've always taken such good care of me, my love." "But I'll take even better care of you." Walter noticed that Emily, even though she was so young, already had a caregiver's mindset, probably developed from watching her mother sacrifice for her. "Emily, you know your mum will also be able to take better care of you once she graduates, right?" "How so?" "She'll be able to work, earn money, buy your medicine without any trouble. And toys too." "And toys too." "And books. Lots of books. And yummy food every day." "Yummy food every day." Emily smiled, satisfied. "Then I'll study really hard to help Mommy study." Emily's childlike logic made everyone laugh. "How are you going to help Mommy study?" asked Walter. I'll be well behaved. I'll do my homework from the little school, and I'll let her study without making a mess. Very well thought out. And when she's tired from studying, I'll give her a hug so she can rest. Jessica kissed her daughter's forehead. You're the most special girl in the world, and you're the most special mommy in the world. Walter watched the interaction between mother and daughter with emotion. After days of uncertainty, there was finally real hope on the horizon. That night, as Jessica was putting Emily to bed, the girl asked a question that surprised her. Mommy, do you think Daddy finds out when good things happen to me? Why are you thinking about Daddy? Because today I met my grandparents, and I thought he'd want to know. Emily, do you want to meet your father? I do, but only if he wants to meet me too. And if he doesn't? Then it's okay. I have you, I have my grandparents, I have Grandpa Professor, I have lots of people who love me. You sure do, sweetheart. Mommy, do you still love Daddy? The question caught Jessica off guard. It's complicated, my love. Why is it complicated? Because I loved Daddy, but he left when you were about to be born. And that made you sad. Very sad. But you weren't sad forever, right? No. When you were born, I was happy again. So I helped you not be sad? You made me the happiest person in the world, Emily. That's good. I don't like it when you're sad. Jessica hugged her daughter, once again amazed by the girl's early wisdom. Emily, do you want me to try to find your father? Only if you want to, Mommy. If you don't, it's okay. But would you like to meet him? I would. But more important than meeting Daddy is you being happy. Why is that more important? Because if you're happy, I'm happy. And if you're sad because of Daddy, I'll be sad too. Jessica realized that Emily, even without fully understanding the situation, showed impressive emotional maturity. My love, Mommy is happy now. Very happy. I found my parents again. I'm going back to school. We'll have a home. And we have Grandpa Professor. And we have Grandpa Professor. So we don't have to think about Daddy right now. We don't have to. If one day you want to look for him, we'll look. But for now, let's focus on the good things happening. Okay. Mom? Yes? Thank you for always protecting me. Thank you for giving me the strength to keep going. Emily nestled into her mother's lap and fell asleep with a smile on her face. Jessica stayed awake for a few more hours, processing all the changes that had happened in such a short time. For the first time in years, she felt hopeful about the future. The next morning, Walter accompanied Jessica to Columbia University to try to reactivate her enrollment. The process was simpler than they imagined. The university had specific policies for students who had taken leave due to family health reasons. Jessica, your situation perfectly fits the criteria for reactivation, explained the academic advisor. Even after 8 years? Yes. You took leave for valid reasons and can resume your studies next semester. What about the classes I already took? They're all validated. You just need to complete the remaining credits. Jessica could hardly believe it. How long until I graduate? With full dedication, 1.5 years. If you choose part-time to care for your daughter, 2.5 years. And is there daycare for Emily? Yes, for children of students and staff. When they left the university, Jessica was radiant. Professor, this is really happening. It is, my dear. You're going to fulfill your dreams. I can't wait to tell Emily. They returned home and found Emily in the garden, playing with a doll Margaret had brought her that morning. Mommy, the girl shouted when she saw them. Grandma brought me a doll. What a beautiful doll. And she said tomorrow we'll see our new house. That's right, we'll see the apartment where we'll live. And you, did you get into the big school? I did, Princess. Emily dropped the doll and ran to hug her mother. That's great. Now you'll become a real teacher. I will. And then will you teach me even harder things? I'll teach you everything you want to learn. Even about dinosaurs? Even about dinosaurs. Emily went back to playing with the doll, chattering to herself about all the new things. Walter watched the scene with satisfaction. In just a few days, he had managed to reunite a family and give hope for the future to 2 people who had been without it. The phone rang, and Walter answered. It was Michael. Professor, how was the visit yesterday? It was excellent, Michael. Your parents and Emily were enchanted with each other. And Jessica? Jessica reconciled with her mother. Her family is coming back together. That's great, Professor. I was worried. And you? How did your mum react to the change of plans? She's relieved, actually. I think deep down she always wanted Jessica back. And your dad? My dad is very happy. He said meeting Emily gave him new energy. That's wonderful to hear. Professor, can I ask you something? Of course. How did you know it would work? Michael, families who love each other always find their way back. Sometimes they just need someone to show them the path. You're a special person, Professor. I'm not special, Michael. I just believe in the power of family love. After hanging up, Walter joined Jessica and Emily in the garden. Who was it? Jessica asked. Your brother. He was happy about how the visit went. Michael was always a good brother. He was just obeying Mom. And now he can be your real brother again. Emily looked up from her play. Will Uncle Michael play with me too? Of course he will, Jessica replied. That's so cool. Now I have a real family. You always had a family, Princess. We just weren't all together. But now we are. The rest of the day was spent planning the move to the apartment. Margaret had arranged for basic furniture, and Walter was helping with the practical details. Jessica, you'll need a few things to start over, he said. Like what? Clothes, documents, study materials. Professor, I don't have money for those things. Your family will help with that, and so will I. You've already done so much. Jessica, accept the help with gratitude. When you graduate and get a job, you can help others who are struggling. You're right. I can turn this experience into something positive for others. Exactly. Suffering only makes sense when it creates compassion and a desire to help. Emily, who had been listening, came closer. Mommy, when I grow up, can I help other kids who don't have homes too? If you want to, yes. I do. Because I know how sad it is not to have a home. And now you know how good it feels to have a family who loves you. I do. And I'll teach that to other kids. Walter smiled, seeing how Emily was internalizing values of solidarity and empathy from her own experience. That evening, during dinner, they had an unexpected visitor. Margaret arrived with a younger woman. Jessica, this is Sarah, my new employee. She'll help take care of Emily while you're at college. Hi, Emily, said Sarah, crouching to the girl's height. Your grandma told me so much about you. Emily studied Sarah curiously. Will you stay with me when Mommy goes to school? Of course. We'll play, study, go for walks. Do you like stories? I love stories. And playing with dolls? That too. Emily smiled, approving of Sarah right away. Mommy, I like her. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Margaret turned to Walter. Professor, tomorrow we'll take the girls to see the apartment. Would you like to come? Of course, I'd love to see where they'll live. And Professor? Yes? Richard would like to speak with you tomorrow. He has a proposal. What kind of proposal? He'll explain in person, but I'll say it's about education. Walter was curious but decided to wait until the next day to hear more. The following morning, everyone gathered to see the apartment. It was a cozy place with 2 bright bedrooms, a spacious living room, a fully equipped kitchen, and a small laundry area. Emily ran through every room, excited. Mommy, look at my room. It's all mine. It's yours, sweetheart. And you have your own room too. Yes, I do. And look at this big kitchen. We can cook real food. Jessica looked around the apartment with emotion. After years of living on the streets, having a home of her own felt like a dream. Mom, how can I thank you? By being happy, my dear. That's all. And by taking good care of Emily. I always have, and I always will. While Emily explored the apartment with Sarah, Walter spoke with Richard about the proposal. Professor, I have an idea that might interest you. I'm listening. You retired recently, didn't you? Yes, 6 months ago. And how are you enjoying retirement? To be honest, I was feeling a bit useless until I met Jessica and Emily. Then my proposal might be interesting. I'd like you to consider teaching again. How so? There's a private school nearby that needs an experienced literature teacher. They asked for recommendations and I suggested you. Richard, that's very kind, but let me finish. The school has a scholarship program for underprivileged children. Emily could study there for free. And Jessica? Jessica would attend Columbia in the mornings and could work part-time at the school in the afternoons, helping with extracurricular activities. Walter was impressed by the detailed planning. You've thought of everything. We thought of a way to keep the whole family close and productive, and the school agrees with this. I spoke with the principal. She was very interested when she heard your story. Richard, this would solve several problems at once. Exactly. You'd return to teaching, Jessica would have an income while studying, Emily would attend a good school, and everyone would stay close. I need to talk to Jessica about this. Of course, but Professor? Yes? Thank you for bringing my family back to me. Thank you for allowing it to happen. When Walter shared the proposal with Jessica, she was moved. Professor, this is perfect. We'll get to work together. You'd really like working at a school. It's always been my dream, Professor. Remember how I wanted to be a literature teacher like you? I remember perfectly. Then it'd be like fulfilling an old dream. Emily, who had just finished exploring the apartment, overheard part of the conversation. Mommy's going to work at the school where I'll study. Maybe, sweetheart. That's so cool. Can I visit you at work? Of course. And Grandpa Professor will work there too. That's possible too. Emily clapped her hands. Then we'll all be together again. Walter realized the solution Richard proposed truly met all the needs of their reunited family. A week later, they were officially settled in the apartment. Emily adjusted quickly to the new home and had already made friends with some kids in the building. Jessica resumed her studies with renewed enthusiasm, and Walter accepted the offer to teach at Emily's school. On a sunny Sunday, the whole family gathered in the apartment for a special lunch. Jessica and Emily were there, along with Margaret and Richard, Michael, Walter, and Sarah. Let's make a toast, Richard suggested, raising a glass of juice. What are we toasting to? Emily asked. To family reunited, dreams fulfilled, and the bright future ahead. Everyone raised their glasses. To family, they said in unison. Emily smiled and whispered to Jessica, Mommy, our story had a happy ending, just like the books, right? It did, sweetheart. It really did. Walter watched the scene with deep satisfaction. He had achieved far more than he imagined when he decided to intervene that day in the park. Not only had he reunited a family, but he'd found new purpose in his own life. Months later, Jessica was excelling at Columbia and working at the school with great dedication. Emily thrived in her studies and became one of the school's most beloved students. Richard, despite his illness, spent his final months surrounded by the love of his reunited family. Margaret became a devoted and caring grandmother. And Walter? Walter discovered retirement didn't mean the end of his usefulness, but the start of a new chapter where he could use his experience to impact lives even more meaningfully. One afternoon while teaching, Walter saw Emily walking down the hall toward the library. The girl waved at him through the classroom window, beaming. In that moment, the retired professor understood that some of life's greatest rewards come when we least expect them, and that it's never too late to make a difference in someone's life. The story that began with a chance meeting in a park had become the most beautiful lesson about family love, forgiveness, and second chances. And Emily? Emily grew up knowing she had been loved unconditionally from her first day of life, and that family isn't just about sharing the same blood, but the same love. Years later, when she became the pediatrician she'd always dreamed of being, Emily would tell her young patients that even in the toughest situations, love always finds a way. Just as he had found for her and her mother on that special day when a retired professor decided he couldn't simply pass by someone else's suffering without trying to help. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story of resilience and family love. Do you believe forgiveness and reconciliation are always possible? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if the story touched your heart, Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other moving narratives that show the transformative power of unconditional love.